I went home for Christmas after years away. My family didn't acknowledge me and introduced me as the one who left. My aunt said, "Don't expect a welcome." My mom whispered, "Don't cause trouble." I said, "I won't be back." 3 months later, I made a move they didn't see coming. Now they're begging me to respond. Hey Reddit, I'm Finn 40M, and this is something I've only told a couple of people in real life. I wasn't sure I'd ever really put it out there like this, but after a lot of thinking and a few too many sleepless nights, I decided to share. Maybe for closure, maybe just to get it off my chest, but mostly because I still can't believe the way it all unfolded. This story starts with a return, but to understand why that return mattered, I need to take you back a little first. I grew up in a small town in upstate New York, Ashwood. If you haven't heard of it, you're not missing much. It's the kind of place where people go to the same school their parents did, work at the same factories or service jobs, and marry someone they knew in kindergarten. There's a rhythm to that life. Some people find comfort in it. I never did. My family, the McConnells, have lived in Ashwood for generations. My father, Henry, was a mechanic with his own small shop. Honest work, long hours. He passed when I was in my early 30s, which matters later, but I'll come back to that. My mother, Janice, is still alive and, well, let's say her warmth was reserved for others. Never really for me. I'm the oldest of three. Then there's Wade, my younger brother by 2 years, and Sabrina, our sister, who's 8 years younger than me. Wade stayed in Ashwood and took over Dad's place, not the shop, but his place in the social fabric of the town. He's the guy who knows everyone, helps out at the church barbecue, posts about local sports on Facebook. You know the type. Sabrina's a little different. She moved to the next town over and works as a dental assistant. Not quite as involved with the family, but not estranged either. She's always kind, but careful. She's the sort who tries to keep the peace even when it's hurting her. Then there's me. I left Ashwood at 22 after finishing college, and except for short visits, I never really came back. I pursued a graduate degree in environmental science, and now I work in research and policy development. I live in a mid-sized city in Pennsylvania. I like it here. It's quiet. It's mine. Growing up, I was always different. I liked books more than sports. I asked too many questions at church. I didn't laugh at the jokes Wade and his friends made about people who were different from them. I knew early on that if I stayed, I'd drown in that place. It wasn't about ambition, exactly. It was about survival. And my family never quite forgave me for that. They wouldn't say it outright. That's not their way. They don't scream or throw things. It's quieter than that. More precise. Like tiny paper cuts in the same place every time. My mom would tell people, Finn's off doing his thing, like I'd joined a traveling circus. Wade would joke that I'd gone off to save the whales or whatever. And when I called home, if I called home, it always felt like I was interrupting something. Like I was a guest, not a son. I stopped going back for holidays after Christmas in 2016. It had been a particularly tense visit. My mom made a comment about how I'd gotten soft from city life, and Wade kept poking at me in front of his kids, calling me Professor Finn, like I thought I was better than them. I don't remember if I said anything in return. I probably just smiled and took it, like I used to. After that trip, I started making excuses. Busy at work. Too much snow. Couldn't get away. It wasn't a grand statement. It was just backing away. Fast forward to last December. I got a text from Kara, my cousin on my dad's side. She and I had been close when we were kids. She was the only cousin who really got me, if that makes sense. We used to build forts together, write goofy stories, stuff like that. Life pulled us in different directions, but we stayed in touch. She just had her second baby and said she'd love for me to meet him if I happened to be around during the holidays. She also mentioned, kindly, carefully, that the whole extended family would be gathering at Wade's house for Christmas Eve. It's been a long time, she said. Maybe it would be good to reconnect. Just think about it. I did think about it. For days. I knew what going back meant. I knew what it would feel like to walk into that house again. But there was a part of me, some tired, middle-aged part, that thought, maybe this year will be different. Maybe everyone's softened. Maybe they'll see me. So I rented a car, booked a room at a hotel near the highway. No way was I staying with family, and made the drive up 2 days before Christmas Eve. The drive itself was uneventful. I played some old playlists from college, ate too many gas station pretzels, and tried not to overthink it. When I got to town, I didn't reach out to anyone right away, except Kara. We met up the night before Christmas Eve at a little diner that hadn't changed since the 80s. She looked tired but happy. baby spit on her shirt, dark circles under her eyes. We talked like no time had passed. She told me, gently, that some people in the family might still have their ideas about me. She said Wade was under a lot of pressure lately, managing the shop, taking care of their mom, and that maybe I could just be patient if things felt awkward. I said I'd try, and I meant it. I showed up at Wade's house a little before 6 on Christmas Eve. It's a big place, all beige siding and stone veneer, the kind of house that tries very hard to look expensive. There were lights strung across the porch, a big inflatable snowman on the lawn. Familiar cars lined the street, Uncle Pete's old pickup, Aunt Rhoda's minivan, the same ones from my childhood. I stood at the door for a second before knocking. Wade opened it. He was wearing one of those sweaters with a reindeer stitched into the chest. He blinked when he saw me, like I wasn't quite real. "Oh," he said. "Not angry. Not happy. Just surprised. Didn't think you were coming. I told Kara I'd be here." He stepped aside without a word. As I walked in, I heard the sounds of laughter from the living room. Kids running. Someone telling a story loudly. But the second I stepped into the hallway, something shifted. Like air being sucked out of the room. Not completely. Just enough that I felt it. My mother was standing near the kitchen with a paper plate in her hand. She looked at me the way someone might look at a neighbor's dog who had wandered inside. No hug. No smile. Just a small tilt of her head and a quick, sharp whisper as she passed by me on her way to the den. "Don't cause trouble tonight." I froze for half a second. "I'm not here to cause anything," I said. But she was already gone. From the other room, someone called out, "Who just came in?" And I heard Wade's voice, loud and casual. "It's Finn. You know, the one who left." There was laughter. Not cruel, but not kind either. I stood in the hall, still holding my coat, feeling 12 years old all over again. And that's where things started. I didn't take my coat off. I stood there in the hallway, feeling the weight of the house around me. The familiar smell of the old wood floors, the faint traces of perfume and cleaning products, and something about the air itself that made it feel like I had walked into a memory I wasn't quite ready to face. Aunt Rhoda came into view, walking toward me with that strange, almost predatory smile she always wore when she wanted to say something sharp but make it sound like a compliment. "Well, look who decided to show up," she said, folding her arms across her chest as if it was a victory. "I thought maybe you'd forgotten how to find this place." "I don't forget," I said, the words slipping out before I could stop them. I wasn't angry, not yet, but there was something about the way she looked at me that felt like she was trying to make me the stranger in my own family. She raised an eyebrow. "I didn't mean it like that. Just, well, you don't come around much, do you?" Her voice dropped a little, just low enough for only me to hear. "Maybe you didn't want to be seen." I glanced around, at the faces peeking at me from the living room, at the hallway that was too narrow, the space too small to avoid everyone. Wade had already turned away, talking to one of his friends, who had apparently just finished shoveling his driveway or helping with the community center, because that was the story of their lives. Wade was always busy helping someone. It was his way of earning forgiveness for the fact that he never once questioned anything. His life was the kind of predictable that didn't leave room for thinking too much about who you really were. My mother, Janice, had disappeared into the kitchen. I didn't know where she was now, but I could imagine it, washing dishes or straightening up something, just busy enough to avoid acknowledging the uncomfortable gap between us. I felt the strange urge to leave right then. Not because I was hurt, though I was, but because the whole scene felt staged, like they had all been waiting for me to show up just so they could talk about me in the way they always did. The one who left. The one who was too good for this town. The one who abandoned the family. I swallowed hard, trying to push down the heat rising in my chest. I had left, hadn't I? I had walked away from all of this, all the small-town judgments, the weight of their expectations. And what had I gotten in return? Years of silence, and now this weird, polite cruelty masquerading as family. I didn't belong here anymore. And the truth of it, an uncomfortable, liberating truth, was that I didn't want to belong. Still, I wasn't ready to throw in the towel just yet. "Where's Kara?" I asked, glancing past Aunt Rhoda. "Oh, she's in the kitchen with your mom. Don't know what they're talking about, but I'm sure it's something important." She raised her voice toward the kitchen. "Don't worry, Finn's here." There was an uncomfortable silence, followed by a half-hearted hello from my mom. I let out a breath and turned toward the living room, trying to ignore the way the walls seemed to close in around me. I went to sit on the couch, but the moment I lowered myself into it, Wade's voice called out from the dining room, where he was standing with his friends, his arms crossed like he was holding court. "So," he said, casually, What's it like out there in the big city? You saving the environment or something?" His voice was light, but there was an edge to it, like he was trying to bait me. Everyone in the room turned to look. Not just him, but his friends, his boys from high school, who always had something to say about me, but never enough to be really disrespectful. They didn't need to be. Wade had already done the work for them. The silence hung for a moment, and I had a choice. I could brush it off, like I had done 1,000 times before, or I could push back, remind him of the ways in which I was different, of how much I had grown and changed while he stayed exactly the same. But instead, I just said, "I'm doing what I can." There was a moment of hesitation, like maybe they were expecting me to snap. Maybe they were hoping I'd get defensive, make it awkward. But I wasn't interested in playing that game anymore. I wasn't interested in being their punching bag. Not this time. Wade seemed to sense that I wasn't biting, and so he moved on. Just like that, he dismissed me, and so did the rest of the room. No one spoke to me for the rest of the night, except to pass the mashed potatoes or to ask if I wanted more rolls. I kept my distance, sitting on the couch like a ghost, too visible to be ignored, but too distant to be part of anything. The evening stretched on, and I could feel the weight of their discomfort growing. It wasn't just me being the odd one out. It was them trying to make sure I stayed the odd one out. If I left early, I'd be the one who couldn't handle the pressure. If I stayed, I'd be the outsider in my own family. I wasn't sure what I was hoping for anymore. That maybe someone would come over and apologize? That they'd just acknowledge how much I'd changed and how much I had offered to the world? But I knew deep down that wasn't coming. I wasn't going to get validation from them. Not tonight. Not ever. And that's when Aunt Rhoda appeared again, leaning against the doorframe with her arms crossed. She'd been watching the whole time, calculating. "Finn," she said, almost too sweetly, "you're really not going to make things uncomfortable, are you? We don't need any of that." My heart stopped for a second. I had heard that before. That's how they always controlled me, by making sure I was the one who didn't rock the boat, the one who didn't cause trouble. She was trying to guilt me into silence, into being the polite guest who accepted their judgments and acted like they didn't hurt. I turned slowly to face her, forcing a smile. "I'm not causing anything, Rhoda. You're the ones doing that." She laughed, like I'd just told her the funniest joke she'd ever heard. "Oh, Finn, you were always such a drama queen." I stood up abruptly. "I'm not here to perform for you, Rhoda." Before she could say anything else, I walked out of the living room and into the hall. I grabbed my coat, headed to the door. I didn't care if they noticed or not. But as I reached for the handle, I heard my mom's voice, just soft enough that I almost didn't hear it. "Don't cause trouble." I turned back. "I'm not causing anything, Mom. You all are. I came here to see you. But I don't think any of you care enough to actually see me." And with that, I opened the door and left. That was the last time I set foot in that house. But that wasn't the end of it. No, that was just the beginning. The family still didn't get it. They thought I was just mad or being dramatic. The next few weeks were an exercise in patience. Not the calm, steady patience that comes from waiting for something good, but the kind of patience that grows out of a need for control. They had all acted like I was nothing more than an inconvenience, a problem they could ignore and hope would go away. I had been the one who left, the one who refused to live the way they wanted me to, and they had made it abundantly clear that I was not welcome in their world anymore. But it was clear to me now, they didn't really want me gone. They wanted to control the narrative. They wanted to be able to say, "Finn left." Not us, not because of us. They didn't want to acknowledge that I had made a choice, not a rejection of them, but a rejection of the suffocating, unspoken rules they all lived by. And that was where my revenge would start. At first, I just went about my life. I focused on work, on my own small circle of friends. I didn't talk to anyone in my family, and I certainly didn't reach out. I wasn't bitter, not yet. I was just methodical. I knew it would take time, but I had no doubt that they would eventually reach out to me. They had to. They needed to feel like they had some kind of control over me, even if it was the illusion of control. 3 months later, my phone rang on a Wednesday morning. It was Wade. I hadn't heard from him in months, and I had no intention of picking up. But something told me I should. If I was going to play this game, I needed to know what kind of hand they thought they were holding. I answered, but I didn't say anything right away. I just let the silence linger on the other end, giving him time to speak first. "Finn," he said, his voice just a little too friendly, like it was rehearsed. "I was just thinking about you." I couldn't help but laugh under my breath. Thinking about me? Wade wasn't the type to think about anyone unless it directly benefited him. I was thinking, it's been a while. Maybe we could talk. Clear the air a bit. Clear the air. He wasn't trying to clear anything. He wanted to smooth things over, make it look like I was the one holding on to the grudge, the one who refused to forgive. I could almost picture him standing there with that fake, too casual smile he always wore when he was trying to manipulate a situation. "I'm not sure what there is to clear up," I replied. "You made your position pretty clear back at Christmas." There was a beat of silence on the other end. I could almost hear him working through his thoughts, trying to come up with something that wouldn't make him look like a jerk. Finally, he spoke again. "Look, I know things have been rough. I just think we're all family, and it's time to let some things go. I mean, what's the point of holding on to all that old stuff? We could start fresh, you know?" It was like listening to a script. I didn't say anything at first. I just let the silence hang there. He had no idea what I was doing. He didn't understand the lengths I had already gone to in order to get back at him, back at all of them. "Wade," I said, finally breaking the silence, "I'm not holding on to anything. I've been moving forward. You're the one who's stuck in the past. I don't need you or your forgiveness." There was a slight crack in his voice when he responded, like the mask was starting to slip. "It's not about forgiveness, Finn. It's about family." I could hear the defensive edge creeping in, and I could tell it bothered him that I wasn't falling for his charm. That's when I knew I had them exactly where I wanted them. "Sure," I said, my voice calm. "Family." We hung up soon after that. He didn't even try to push further. He knew he had lost the game. But what he didn't know was that the real game was just beginning. I'd done my research quietly and without anyone knowing. I hadn't contacted my family. I hadn't even spoken to Kara since Christmas. But I had been watching. I had been taking notes. The first thing I did was look into the family business, my brother Wade's auto shop. I knew that he had struggled in the past couple of years. The small business tax credits were tricky, and running an old shop like that wasn't as easy as people thought. My dad had kept it running for years, but after he passed, it seemed like the shop had gone downhill. Wade had kept it open through sheer force of will, but he was fighting against a town that was slowly fading away. Wade didn't know it, but I had access to public business records. I wasn't an expert in this stuff, but it didn't take long to find out that his shop was actually in more trouble than anyone knew. He had a few liens on the property, unpaid back taxes, and some complaints filed with the local consumer board. It was messy. It was bad. And I was going to make sure it got a lot worse. But I wasn't going to just ruin him directly. I knew that would only turn the family against me even more. No, I was smarter than that. I was going to work quietly from the inside out. The first thing I did was call in a few favors. A few people from my time in environmental research. People who knew how to dig deep into businesses that claimed to be green but weren't. Wade had always prided himself on having an eco-friendly auto repair shop, but I knew he was bending the rules. He never bothered to get the proper permits for waste disposal, and I knew the state would take a much harsher view of it now. I reached out to the local Environmental Protection Agency and made an anonymous tip. It was all well documented, the way his business handled hazardous materials, the way they dumped used oil without proper disposal. I made sure to include enough details to spark an investigation. It didn't take long for the authorities to show up and start questioning the practices at Wade's shop. They found a lot more than I thought they would. But that was just one part of the puzzle. The next piece came with the local zoning laws. Wade had been trying to expand his business, add a second lot for repairs, but he had run into roadblocks because of zoning restrictions in the area. I knew he was on the verge of trying to circumvent those restrictions to build without the proper permits. All I had to do was make a few calls to the right people and make sure they knew about his plans to expand illegally. By the time he realized what was happening, it would be too late. He would be stuck in a whirlwind of paperwork, fines, and regulations. His business would be in tatters, and his reputation in town, well, I was about to ruin it. As for the rest of the family, they weren't going to escape this either. I knew my mother, Janice, was struggling with the idea that I might never come back. She'd been quiet over the last few months, no doubt trying to pretend that I wasn't really gone. But deep down, she still needed me to be the son she could show off, the one who could be the success story. I hadn't spoken to her since that night in December, but I knew she wouldn't let it stay that way forever. But this time, when she reached out, and I knew she would, I was going to make sure it was on my terms. I was finally going to make them see what it felt like to be ignored, to be the one who no longer mattered in their story. This wasn't going to be a quick revenge. It wasn't about yelling or confrontation. No, this was about taking everything they'd built, everything they thought they could control, and slowly tearing it apart until they were begging me to come back. But by the time that happened, I'd already made my decision. I wasn't going to be the one who returned. They'd have to come to me. 3 weeks after my quiet sabotage began, Wade called me again. This time, there was no forced politeness, no hidden agenda. There was only frustration in his voice, raw, genuine frustration that spoke of how much his world was starting to unravel. "Finn," he said, his voice shaking a little. "We need to talk." I had already known it was coming. I knew he couldn't let it go. He had never been the type to simply accept things falling apart without trying to fix them. But I also knew I wasn't going to give him an easy out. "What's wrong?" I asked, keeping my tone neutral. I could almost hear him pacing on the other end, his breath ragged, trying to collect his thoughts. "I don't know what is going on, but you need to tell me if you've been behind this. The state is investigating the shop. They're talking about shutting us down, Finn. You know what that means. The customers are disappearing. We're losing business. My employees are asking questions. And the zoning people, they've got us in a vice. If we don't fix this, it's over. You've got to tell me, did you do this?" I paused, letting the weight of his question hang in the air. Part of me wanted to savor the panic in his voice, to feel the satisfaction of knowing I was in control. But I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I just let the silence stretch between us. He couldn't understand why this was happening. In his mind, he still believed he could muscle his way through every problem, like he had always done. He hadn't realized that I was doing what he never could, thinking ahead, playing the long game. "You're right," I finally said, my voice calm, almost detached. "You should have thought about this before you started playing fast and loose with the rules." There was another long pause, and then Wade's voice cracked. "What do you want from me, Finn? If you've done this, if you've really done this, then I need you to fix it." It was almost laughable. After everything, after all the years of ignoring me, of treating me like an afterthought, here he was, asking for my help. But I wasn't going to fix it for him. Not now. Not ever. "I'm not fixing anything," I said, more firmly this time. "You wanted to live on your own terms, Wade. You wanted to do everything your way, without any consequences. Well, now you're getting the consequences. Welcome to reality." There was a long silence, and I knew Wade was trying to figure out if I was bluffing, if there was any way out of this. But the damage had already been done. His business was unraveling. The state's investigation into his shop was real, and it was serious. He had no way of stopping it. "I don't need you to fix it," Wade said finally, his voice soft, almost broken. "But I need you to come back. The family, they want you back. Mom's upset. She won't stop asking about you. Kara won't stop bringing it up. Rhoda, too. You know how she is. She won't drop it." I could hear the desperation in his voice, but there was no real remorse. He wasn't asking for forgiveness. He was asking for me to return to the family fold, to help him out of the mess he created. He needed to restore the image of the perfect, happy family that had never truly existed. And that's when I knew it was time to end this. No more games. No more subtle sabotage. No more pretending. "I'm done," I said, my voice steady, but final. "I'm done trying to fit into a picture that's not mine. I'm not going to be your fixer, Wade. You made your choices. You're going to have to live with them." The line went quiet for a long time. I wasn't sure what Wade was thinking, but I could imagine him standing there, staring at his phone, trying to process the fact that I had just closed the door on him and on everything he had ever believed. "I don't expect you to understand," I added, my words slower now, almost as if I were speaking to a child. "But I'm not the one who left. You were the ones who abandoned me." With that, I hung up. The days after that phone call were a whirlwind of activity. News of the investigations into Wade's shop spread fast, and before long, it wasn't just the state looking into his business practices. Local media got hold of the story, and within a week, his reputation had taken a serious hit. Customers pulled out, and the other businesses in town that had once looked the other way were suddenly more concerned about their own image than about helping a fellow business owner. The family started to panic, and it didn't take long for my mom, Janice, to reach out. She called me, her voice strained, trying to sound like she had always been on my side. But I could hear the desperation in her tone. "Finn, please," she pleaded. "Wade needs help. You've got to come back. He's not handling this well. We're all trying to keep things together. You can't just walk away." I was calm, almost cold in my response. "I told you, Mom. I'm not coming back. I don't need this family to be whole. You all made it clear that I wasn't welcome before, so don't act like I'm the one who abandoned you." I didn't mean it like that," she said, her voice wavering. "I know we haven't always been perfect, but we're family, Finn. We can work this out. You're still a part of us." The word stung, but I had heard them too many times before. She didn't understand. She never understood. I'm not part of this anymore, Mom. I made my peace with that. And just like that, I severed another tie. I wasn't angry anymore. I was beyond anger. I was done being the person they could control, the one they could guilt trip into coming back when it suited them. The final piece of my plan fell into place when the town's local newspaper published an article on the troubles surrounding Wade's shop. The story was full of details about the poor management, the lack of proper licenses, the faulty equipment, and the way Wade had avoided paying his employees on time. It wasn't just about bad business decisions anymore. It was a story about neglect, greed, and irresponsibility, and I knew it would be enough to drive the final nail into the coffin. Wade couldn't fix it. The damage was done. His reputation was in tatters, and there was no way he could recover from it. And as for the family, they were left scrambling, trying to keep up appearances, trying to hold onto the image they had built of themselves. But no matter how hard they tried, I wasn't coming back. I had cut my ties, and they were left in the wreckage of their own making. As for me, I moved forward. I found peace in knowing that the revenge wasn't just about causing chaos. It wasn't about destroying everything in my path. It was about making sure they understood something, that I had always been my own person, that I had always been stronger than they thought, and that, when they tried to push me aside, they had lost more than they ever realized. I had walked away, but in the end, it was them who couldn't escape the consequences. The family? They never asked me to come back, but they didn't need to. They had already learned the lesson I wanted to teach them. They had lost me, and that was a loss they couldn't undo.